One of the things that I come to realize, and I think it's sad that others don't, is that there's certain principles that exist whether you like it or not. They're there. Your view of them is the only thing you can really change. I'm Chad Conley, and this is the Tom Rowland Podcast.
That was Chad Conley, and this is episode number 29. Chad Conley is an entrepreneur and trout junkie, and he has a very cool story. I have enjoyed his story every time I've talked to him, and I hope that you will too. We're going to learn how he and how you can design a life so that you can fish as much as you want. But before we get to that, I want to thank you so much for the ratings and reviews that you've been leaving on iTunes. That goes a long way to getting more people to exposed to the podcast. And if you're so inclined after you listen to this, love it if you'd give a rating and review as well. We've been getting a lot of emails at the dedicated email address for this show, which is podcast@saltwaterexperience. Let me know what you think about this new show that we've put out over the last couple of weeks, How To Tuesday. A lot of people seem to like it, like to know what you think about it. And if you have some topics that you would like to hear covered, I would love to hear that too. This guy did just that. And he is the fan of the week this week, Josh McDonald. Love the new show. It says, love the new short show. I'm new to saltwater fishing, but I would like to know how to keep bait alive overnight. I have killed all my shrimp 3 or 4 times now. Can you keep it overnight? Can you tell me how? Well, Josh, I can tell you how, and I will tell you how on a future episode. In 10 minutes or less, I'll do just that. And just to make you feel a little bit better, if you've killed it 3 or 4 times, I've probably killed it 30 or 40 times. And yeah, sometimes it dies. There are definitely things that you can do. So we will go over that on a How To Tuesday. I appreciate the suggestion. So that moves us into this part of the show where I tell you that it is brought to you by Waypoint TV. Waypoint TV has over 80 different producers in hunting and fishing, making some of the best content available. And it's all free for you. Not only is it free, but it is available to you on just about every platform. You can go to the website and use it like a regular website, or get the app. Download the app on your smart TV, on your phone, on your computer, on your tablet, wherever you would like, Android or iOS. It's there. So go to waypointtv.com, find out how, or just search it at your app store on your device. Now, stand by for my conversation with entrepreneur and all-around cool guy, Chad Conley. You do have a cool story.
Well, one of the things that
We're live.
Oh, okay. Well,
You do have a cool story. And the first time that I met you, we went fishing together.
Yep.
I heard just a small portion of your story. I'd like to hear the whole story because I was really curious, intrigued, interested for a number of reasons. But what's your story, man?
Well, first of all, listen, it's an honor to be here. I genuinely appreciate the invite. It kind of ties into this story, right? Here I am, got the opportunity to fish with the Tom Rowland, and now I'm here on the podcast. Very honored to be here. It's funny how things work out in life, especially when you have the right outlook or you know how to approach it. And I would say I kind of sort of stumbled into that, but it was out of necessity. So, everybody's got a story. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's, and they're all uniquely theirs. Mine kind of started in the very beginning. My biological parents were basically teenagers. They were pregnant teenagers. Thankfully, thank God, they put me up for adoption. And my grandparents stepped in kind of immediately, and they kind of had me, I think, from what I understand, from what I've been told, kind of from day one. But the adoption was official when I was about 15 months old. So
okay, so when you say your grandparents stepped in, that was your natural grandparents?
So okay. It was my father's parents.
Okay.
Yeah, biological father's parents. So, whenever I reference mom or dad, I'm really talking about my grandfather and grandmother if you're speaking in biological terms. But yeah, they stepped in, adopted me, and it probably was a better track than teenage parents who were addicted to drugs and things like that. They lived a pretty rough life. but they kind of had some of their own issues. Dad, and again, that's my grandfather I'm referencing, but and I don't have a lot of hard feelings toward him. I genuinely, as an adult now, I feel sorry for him. But he was an alcoholic, and he never abused me. I don't feel like. I mean, he was born in 1936. Mom was born in 1932. They're Depression era babies. I would say that they were very stern and very hard with me. I would say that anytime he disciplined me was probably a little bit more than what many would get today. But I don't feel like I was abused. But he was he was rough with Mom, and sadly, as a child, I witnessed a lot of that. It was scary. It was something that as an adult having to deal with, having to look back on, was tough. But growing up in that environment, when I was about 10 or 11 years old, after 35 years or whatever, 40 years together, they split. They split up. Didn't totally get divorced, but they were separated. They were in the process. They were not living together. And Dad was very spiteful. About it, and didn't really support us. He helped, I guess I would say, keep the bills paid, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
But we didn't have any abundance, that's for sure. And fast forward a little bit, when I was 14 years old, he had a heart attack. He was 58 years old. It was on Halloween. He was found deceased. And there's Mom, basically someone who's, I think at that time, in her early 60s, with a 14-year-old. She's widowed. And, she grew up in Ball Ground, Georgia, born in 1932. She didn't have an education. And so for her to try to find income to make money to support us at that age, I mean, it was hard.
What did she do?
Really hard. She worked at Burger King.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's what it boils down to. There's nothing glamorous about it. Now, she was one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. She put the hours in. Just the return on those hours wasn't what anyone would probably want to have.
Right.
And we lived in a single wide trailer. We lived in a 14 by 60 single wide trailer. That's kind of the, where the stepping off point was for me, is becoming a young man, working my way into being an adult. Senior in high school, Mom was diagnosed with lung disease. And I was a little early in school. I was 17 years old. I wasn't 18 at the time. I was 17 when I graduated. But I was basically put in this place in my senior year where, okay, Mom physically can't work anymore. She's got prescriptions that are very expensive. Even though we only lived in a trailer with no income, I mean, no income is no income.
Right.
You've got to find a way to make ends meet. And so I was working 30 to 35 hours a week and going to school full time. And I found myself at a crossroads, Tom. I found myself at a place where before I really had a chance to, I would say, quote unquote, mature, I was forced into it to say, okay, I can either choose to be a victim and become, another ward of the state, or whatever you want to call it, another drag on the system, so to speak, or I can choose another path and say, you know what, I don't know the way through this, but I know that if I work hard enough, I probably can't lose. So that was the formative years for me in shaping kind of how I looked at life.
So how did you come across that attitude? Like, what influences in your life were allowing you to look at it that way? Like, there is a victim mentality and there is an overcoming mentality. Is that coming from your grandmother?
I think with like many things in life, it was shaped from multiple places. One was definitely her work ethic. While she never had the skills, the education, the things that you would think you would need to have a very, very high income, she had the work ethic that supported someone that would probably have a high. So her whole thing is even with our we lived in a trailer, but her whole thing was, it may be a trailer, but it doesn't have to be dirty. We kept it very nice.
Right.
And that's just the way that she approached things. So it's kind of like, this is the cards you've got. You're going to work with that. And that was very much a big part of it. I had some teachers, one in particular. I had an automotive. I did the vocational path in high school, partially, and took college prep, math and whatever. But I had the vocational automotive class. And the guy that taught that class, I'll never forget his name, is Coach Corrigan. And he was a Marine.
Mm-hmm.
And he very much had that mentality of just don't make any excuses, own your stuff. You screwed up, that's fine. But don't come in here making poor excuses. And so between having the influence of him and some others in my life, and my mother or grandmother, that had a big part of it. And the other thing was, I was looking, the family, kind of the whole family tree, sadly, when you looked around, it's a lot of failure and a lot of excuses. And so when I looked around, I thought, well, that's not working for anybody else. So that's probably not the best path for me to follow. But definitely. And coming out of that, it's interesting how quickly things turn. With that work ethic, I kind of started to become a little bit more creative in my work.
And what was your work at this point?
Well, I had gotten a job in distribution, so I was working in a warehouse. Started doing the volunteer firefighting thing with Cherokee County Fire, and just really enjoyed that. Really, really, really loved kind of zigging when everybody else was zagging. You hear a racket or you see a calamity and you run to it instead of away from it. I just really, really enjoyed that, and was working towards becoming a paid full-time firefighter. And then I had these side ventures that I was working on. It was the early stages of me being an entrepreneur. I didn't really realize that I would ever own my own business, but I did landscaping. I did things like that, and it would make great money at it. I mean, you could bag groceries, which I did when I was 16 years old, and you could make whatever minimum wage, $5 an hour or whatever, plus some tips. But then you could go cut a few lawns and get several $100s a month, and I could do that after my regular job in the summer and still have time. I get off at work 8 to 4 at the distribution center and have several hours to go cut some lawns. And when you're young like that, you just go knock it out, and that worked out well. September 11th happened, though. September 11th happened, and they called me into the fire station. I was a volunteer, but they called us in and sent a bunch of fire engines to Fulton County because I live there just north of Atlanta, and they didn't know what was happening. The thought process was the CDC could be hit. Who knows? Everybody was scrambling. It was just a lot of confusion. When they called me, I didn't realize that the towers had been hit by a commercial aircraft. Right. That wasn't. I'm thinking small plane. Because it's hard to remember. I know you can appreciate this, but when you think back, I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't have
Nobody
news. Just bleeding through to me from everywhere. So I finally found my way to a television and really saw what was going on. I was like, holy crap. And that's about the time the second plane hit. And you just knew. Like, okay, if there was ever any doubt that this was, or if you thought maybe this was an accident, this just erased it.
Right.
Something's going on. Almost immediately, I just had this swelling up of, I've got to do something about this. So I went and I joined the Marine Corps. I actually joined in November. I had to get some things straight. That time between September 11th and November was really me figuring out, what am I going to do with Mom? I can't just run away, go try to be a hero or whatever I thought I was going to do at the time and just leave her. She didn't have anybody. So my solution to that was to actually join the Marine Corps Reserve. So I thought, okay, well, if I join the reserve, I can serve, I can put my time in, because they wouldn't allow me to take her as a dependent. That was the big hang up. So, but I joined as a reservist, and man, I mean, you total up my active duty time. I had several years in active duty.
Yeah.
And I should have known that when I did it. I went in November, joined in November of 01. They shipped me for boot camp in February of 02, out of Parris Island in May of 02. Infantry school, the light infantry training. Infantry wasn't my primary MOS, but infantry school, my MOS school to learn my trade. Got back sometime around October, November, and then I was activated in February.
Wow.
and back at it, and it was kind of like that, back and forth the whole 6 years of my contract. But while I was in, I had been kind of kicking the tires on going to college. There's an old timer that I worked with, and he's since deceased. He was a great wealth of knowledge, though, and I tried to just soak it up when he talked. I tried to just really listen. I had lamented to him one day. I said, I was 23 years old at the time. I said, man, I wish I'd went to school. I'd already be done now. And he said, well, why don't you go? I said, it's 4 years of school, He said, how old are you going to be in 4 years? And I didn't pick up on where he was going with it at the time. I was like, well, I'll be 27. He said, well, you know what? You're going to be 27 in 4 years, whether you go to school or not. Well, that's very true. So, so I stepped out there and I did a non-traditional school because I was still in the reserves. and could be deployed at any time. So, but I went to DeVry University. I did make sure they were accredited because I thought, I don't know, maybe I'll get my commission. Maybe I'll become an officer. Who knows? I want to leave that door open. I got a 4-year degree in project management. And along the way, met a gentleman who's currently my business partner. And the year 2008, I got out of the Marine Corps in February. I graduated college in May of 2008. So these two things kind of come together at once. And I found myself at a crossroads where, like, okay, you're 27 years old now, Chad. You got a 4-year degree. You got your 6 years of the Marine Corps done. Now what?
Right.
I'm not going to go back to a distribution house. Not that I'm above that work, but I mean, it's time to grow. It's time to move on. And I'd found myself into this industry, the roofing industry. I thought, that's redneck. I don't want to do that. But the guy that I met, I knew him. I knew him well. His family was doing well. And I thought, why not? Let me take a look at that. Because a cube farm's hell for me. I can't do a cube farm.
Right.
Having been a firefighter, even when I worked in the warehouse, I was always out on the road with the trucks and stuff. Obviously, the Marine Corps, nothing that I ever did equaled sitting at a desk. I'm not wired that way. But a lot of the jobs the perceived jobs, of the glass building, that's where you make money. You get into this corporation or that corporation and climb the ladder and make the bucks, and that's kind of the only lanes I could really see at the time. And then I got brought into the roofing industry and I realized, wow, what a phenomenal industry. There's 3 things in life we need: food, water, and shelter. That's the business of number 3. It's right there at the top, but it's so poorly served. I mean, it's just junk contractor after junk contractor. They don't call people back like they're supposed to. Just a very basic, simple stuff that any other business in this world would have to do to survive. And so I got into it. I love the customers. I love fulfilling promises for those folks and them seeing that, what? There's actually guys out there that aren't garbage.
Yeah.
That was very rewarding. So I just fell in love with it. The company that I was working for at the time, though, they did put really good roofs on. I mean, the quality was great. The ownership, the mindset of the ownership, though, was very feeble from an entrepreneurial aspect. It was, I will do this in the summertime. It's wintertime. Hey, guys, good luck to y'all. I'll see you back here in March. That was after I'd been there about 6 months. You gotta be kidding me. What business does that?
Yeah.
And that's not what I was told when I went to go work there. So it's not the type of organization I would have went to go work for. So the guy that brought me into it, he and I went and surveyed some storm damage at Hurricane Ike. We thought, well, we'll go out there and see if there's something to do. Maybe we can convince this guy, work through the winter and we can go sell roofs out there for the storm damage and do some replacements and things. That was out in Houston, Texas. And you can talk a lot about this. I know you and Turner just made the trip out,
right,
and did the podcast, and it's kind of a similar scenario. I mean, we had like a 10 or 11 hour drive to Houston and back, and you can talk about a lot. So
there's a lot of talking that gets done on a road trip like that,
and a lot of good coffee drink too.
Yeah,
and so we were trucking down the road, and the gentleman, my business partner John, he said, "You ever thought about doing this for yourself?" And I kind of studied about what he said for a second. I said, "I have." I said, "But I don't take entrepreneurship lightly. If we're going to do it, you're going to go in with both feet." And, the prospect of that's a little bit scary, but anything good that's ever happened in my life, like everything good that's happened in my life has been when I stepped out of my comfort zone. Going to Parris Island, that'll bless you. It'll bless you.
Yeah.
But man, the stories we've got from that place. And while it was miserable while I was there, I look back on it and I would do it again in a heartbeat.
That had to be a really unique and interesting time, right? Like that was almost directly post 9/11. So you have a ton of people that are of the mindset like you, like we're going to do something about this. We're actually going to, probably more than any other time in history, you have people dropping what they're doing and going there. That had to be a really unique time for the military as a whole. I mean, we've talked to a lot of different people that went to the military directly after 9/11, and they were all incredibly motivated. So you take a standard Parris Island boot camp, and then I would imagine when all of this comes in, it gets ramped up considerably. It's got to be faster. They've got to put more people through. I don't know, what was that period like?
As having full frontal lobe development now in my 30s, looking back at it, you think, golly, we were something was wrong with us. But at the time, it was cool.
Yeah.
There was pain involved with it. They put pain in our bodies.
Well, there's going to be pain either way.
Absolutely. And so, there's those aspects of it. It wasn't all a rose garden for sure. I mean, I think they had a slogan for that once. But the thought process, like they would talk to us, and it wasn't like, hey, we're here because one day you might need these skills. It was in the context of, you're going to need these skills.
You're going.
It's happening.
Yes.
Coming
off of a 20-year piece? I mean,
well,
for the most part?
Yes. And the thing is that at that time, in February of 2002, Iraq, I mean, I'm sure there was people in Washington talking about Iraq, but the imminent, we're going into Iraq wasn't a thing then.
Mm-hmm.
It was Afghanistan.
Right.
We were putting ordnance on the ground in Afghanistan. So fast forward a little bit, though, and we start approaching spring of 2003. I was activated in February, and when I was activated, they sent me to Camp Pendleton, and we were fleet replacement for MALS 39, which is the air wing there on the base, and all of them were going forward. And there was just a surrealness about it. And so I remember going into meetings, and they were saying, hey, we're expecting, this many months into Baghdad. I think they said 6 months into Baghdad, 6,000 casualties. Because what they were anticipating was that Saddam, he was going to put up his final fight. Because he knew he wasn't going to get a pass on this
right.
one.
Right.
He got by with the first Bush. He wasn't going to get by with the second one. So we did a lot of nuclear, biological, and chemical warfare training. We spent a lot of time in mock gear with masks on, and filling them up with sweat and all kinds of crazy stuff. And that part of it was kind of like, man, if I'm really there, and they really try to throw some sarin gas or something, this is really going to suck. This is really going to suck because you're so hindered with all that gear on. So there was a surrealness about it, but then there was like this in a weird way, and I don't want this to be misconstrued because loss of life, injury, things like that, it's serious. It's not to be taken lightly. But the other side of it was there was just kind of this excitement and this kind of, we're about to go in there and freaking tear somebody apart.
Mm.
And that feeling was, whether it was healthy or not, I don't know, but having come off of September 11th, having been so ramped up for everything, and not knowing whether your next stop's going to be Afghanistan or Iraq or whatever, it really, really got your blood flowing. Now, full disclosure, I don't want to pretend to be something I'm not. They never sent me forward. Somehow it never happened, and a lot of it had to do with the MOS I had. I spent 6 years making liquid oxygen, liquid nitrogen. It's a weird MOS.
So you're making that for what purpose?
For the flight line. So I was a part of several aviation units. Some had purely rotary aircraft. So the nitrogen is really the only thing we used on those flight lines. But if there's anything that was exceeding 12,000 feet in altitude, which is basically any fixed wing aircraft, they were using liquid oxygen for aviators breathing oxygen. So our MOS was really a Cold War MOS, and it still is really. But what it was designed to do is you could take a diesel generator in a cryogenics plant. We had a kind of a load and haul away cryogenics plant, and you could throw it down on an interstate anywhere on the Eisenhower system and basically turn it into an airport. Fuel's relatively easy to get. A lot of things are relatively easy to get. Cryogenic liquids are hard to get. There's only a few of us. There's 158 of us in the Marine Corps. And since we're expeditionary force, we had to be ready to be anywhere in the world at any time.
Right.
We do a lot of cross-training with Taiwan. They turn their interstates, because they've got China breathing down their neck. They turn their interstates into military bases for training pretty regularly.
Wow.
Now, the fifth generation in forward aircraft, like the F-35, they've got onboard oxygen generators. So probably sometime in the future, and it's probably going to be several decades from now, even still, because the way these things come online, they're kind of slow. But there may not be a need for that MOS, but right now it still exists. Yeah. So that's kind of what we were there for. Now, you look at Afghanistan, you look at Iraq, we had such great civilian support, great infrastructure. They just bought it all from civilians. They didn't need us to do an expeditionary unit in Iraq.
Yeah.
Those countries aren't that big. The aircraft, that they can cover a lot of ground. So we had a lot of really good fixed air wing stations established quickly.
Mm-hmm.
So there wasn't really a lot of work for us. I mean, they were out there. Those guys were existed. There were some of them in theater, but there weren't many of us out there. So, but yeah, so that's kind of a picture into my service in the Corps, and you're right, the tempo, the way that we operated and everything. That's my only experience with the military. I couldn't imagine going in and it being 10 years into a 20-year peacetime. It would have to be different, but the Corps is still always going to be the Corps. They're going to do things the way they do them so that they can fight and win. I imagine it's not going to be soft, but there was just something about knowing that, and I ran into guys from boot camp later in my career, and it's random how we run into each other. You'd be on the military and you'd be at Conley Bay, Hawaii, and run into somebody you were at boot camp with.
Mm-hmm.
Small world, And they tell stories. They're like, yeah, man, I was protecting oil fields in Iraq, and they tell you about some of the firefights that they were in. You're like, holy crap, man, that was 12 weeks after I saw you last.
Yeah.
You were like blowing crap up and neck deep in it. So I mean, it for a lot of those guys, it happened quick, and these guys were 18 years old. But I love it though, because it's a testament to our country. It's a testament to who we are as a nation with our patriots, that this thing happened, and they were probably at some point having to turn people away. I don't know that to be a fact, but I know that when I went to the MEP station to sign off and basically get on the bus and leave, it was packed.
Yeah.
Like there wasn't room for anyone there.
Wow.
And that's awesome. I just think that's awesome. I think millennials, and I'm kind of on the ragged edge of it. I was born in 1980, so I'm not technically a millennial, but that the thought process of millennials, and you hear a lot of things. My business partner and I were having a debate about this the other day. So I think they're misunderstood. I think sometimes we don't know how to communicate to them, especially folks like myself who were raised by Depression era, parents and everything. It's easy to say, oh, they're lazy or whatever. But here's the reality of the matter. Right after September 11th, and even many years after, because I ran into a Marine the other day at a fly shop in Helen, Georgia. We traded typical Marine Corps pleasantries, and we started talking about, when did you get in? And he's like, oh, I went in 2005. I mean, he's squarely a millennial.
Right.
And they still, with all the, stereotypes or whatever you'll hear in the media about, they rose up. They said, you know what, fine, you want to pick a fight? We'll give you one. And pure voluntary, there wasn't a draft. And so I love that about our nation. I feel like if the problem or the situation arises, I think we may be surprised what we get out of our youth for sure.
How hard do you think it is for anyone, a millennial, someone of your generation, someone of my generation? How hard do you think it is to break a chain of mental habits? Like, for example, in your story, you've got most of the people surrounding you are in this cycle of no abundance, like what you were mentioning, and you were able to break out of this cycle in some way that we're going to get to. You have millennials that may or may not. My personal feeling about millennials is I don't see that they're all over the board. I see that they're either like Builder, my friend, that is one of the hardest working 4-5-star A players that there has ever been, or on the other side of the millennial scale, there are some really, really lazy people that cannot communicate, cannot look someone in the eye, cannot communicate in any way. And it doesn't seem like there is a wide variety in the middle. It's either 5-star A players or like, I cannot communicate with that person. That's been my experience. But so say you're stuck in that little cycle as a millennial that can't communicate, or you're in your cycle of all the people around you are in lack. How hard is it, and what does somebody have to do? Or maybe it's somebody like even you even mentioned, like you saw that the glass buildings were the only way to make a living. That was the only way to do really well, right? So that's a cycle. For me, it was that my dad always went and put a coat and tie on every single day. All the people that he was around put a coat and tie on every single day, whether they were in banking or insurance or salesmen of some sort. Even car dealerships, they used to wear a coat and tie every day. So my feeling when I grew up was that's how you made a living.
Yep.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
So we've outlined like 3 little cycles. How is it that you think someone breaks that chain? How do you break out of that? Because you did.
Charles Duhigg wrote a book. He's wrote several amazing books. One of them, I believe, was The Power of Habit. But his newest one, Smarter, Faster, Better, he talks about this concept of the internal locus of control. And basically what it boils down to is your ability to regulate kind of how you approach situations in life, right? And so for me, and I can't give myself a lot of credit, Tom, to be honest with you. I wish there was a prescriptive way that I could say, hey, here's how you do it. For me, it was out of necessity. Now, there was a switch that flipped because many people find situations where necessity is required and they don't always break through.
Right.
But it came down to a point to where it looked like for me, it was get it done, or you and your elderly, mother, quote unquote, adopted, are going to be homeless. There's your two options.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, there's just no way. If I'm going to go down, I'm going to go down swinging. There's no way I'm going
Right,
to let this happen.
but there's other people in that scenario that are like, well, this seems comfortable. Like, this. Everybody I
agree.
know is like that. So am I going to end up homeless, or am I going to end up just living in a smaller trailer, or whatever it is? There are a lot of people that just relegate themselves to, well, this is how it's going to be.
Yeah, I see it. I saw it growing up. I mean, they either relented to, this is as good as I'm ever going to do, or they gave into drugs or alcohol, or something took control of their lives. Many times, the biggest thing that took control of their lives was the victim mindset.
Yes.
I mean, that's the thing is that the victim mindset, and it's so funny, Tommy. I've got an 8-year-old son, and of course a newborn too. But my 8-year-old son, if he were here right now, and you were to ask him unprompted, what is fair? The first thing he'll tell you is fair doesn't exist. I taught him that very, very, very young, and I said, son, the world will absolutely crap on you. It does not care about how you feel today. It's not going to give you opportunities, and it is going to give you opportunities, but you can't look at it through that filter of why me. Like you just can't do it. One of the things that I come to realize, and I think it's sad that others don't, is that there's certain principles that exist whether you like it or not. They're there. Your view of them is the only thing you can really change.
Right.
Right. I mean, it could be, my story could just as easily be, hey, I tackled the thing. I beat poverty. Oh, now I got cancer. That could just as easily be my story.
Mm-hmm.
But even then, what am I going to do with it? Am I going to look at that and go, oh, now woe is me? Or, hey, what can I do with what time I've got left to affect or make a change on someone else's life? And that kind of really became the bigger thing for me, is to start putting other people first. Now, I didn't realize it at the time, but as I look back, I didn't do it for me. I did it for Mom. I was young. I didn't know what success, if any, I would ever have, but I knew I had a lot of years, and I knew she didn't. So it was important for me to make sure that her last years weren't her worst.
Yeah.
So this others first mentality was a big driver for me, because when you put other people first, you can't be a victim.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Because when you're a victim, you need everybody else.
Yeah.
So, but how you get someone who is stuck in that rut, who is in that cycle of poverty, or who's in that chain where they're second, third, fourth. I mean, you look all the way back through their family tree, which if you were to go far enough back, I will say that there was a time, I mean, capital is so readily available now. If you and I wanted to go get a $50,000 loan, we could have one before lunch.
Probably, yeah.
And that's true for most people. And even if your credit's not great, you still get the loan. It's just, they're just going to bury you in interest, right? Well, when our grandparents or great-grandparents were coming along, if you didn't know somebody, or if you didn't have substantial collateral, that was not possible.
Right.
So even if you had the greatest idea in the world, if you invented sliced bread, you had no way to get it to market. So there were limiting factors generations ago. The thing is, that's not true now, and it hasn't been true for several decades. So the chain started, and it's like for some people it never broke, and it just keeps continuing. But the only thing I know that I can relate to from my personal experience is hit that crossroads to say, hey, it's not all about me. I can't be a victim. Things are going to happen. Something horrible could happen tomorrow, or something great could happen tomorrow. And what I coupled with that is to stop looking at problems as problems and start looking at problems as opportunities. And that sounds strange, but the thing is that if problems are nails and you think you're a problem solver, so you're a hammer, all you see are problems.
That's right.
So if you look at problems or failures as opportunities, even if it's just an opportunity to learn that, okay, that way didn't work, and now I'm going to try another way. If you take that approach and you turn your opportunity radar on and turn it up to 11 and stop looking for nails all the time and start looking for opportunities, man, they are everywhere. Matter of fact, you start seeing them in such abundance that your next biggest challenge becomes
saying no.
How to focus. How to focus. Okay, well, I can't do 100 things. What are the couple of things that I'm going to do really well? And it's funny. It's funny how that switch can flip. I'm super passionate about this. I wish so much, and this is something that I'm working towards even right now as you and I speak, to see how and where I can even speak into someone else's life to see if we can't break that chain.
Mm. Yeah, I find it very interesting about breaking that chain, because that chain can be virtually anything. We're talking about poverty and lack. In your case, another person may have drugs and alcohol in their family
Absolutely.
for generations.
Absolutely.
And it just seems like the normal thing, right? The abnormal thing is living clean and sober and actually being responsible.
And for some families, just character issues. Like for some families,
Right.
being criminal is a
being
chain,
criminal,
you
being
know?
a liar, lying to
Absolutely.
your family, lying to everyone
Yeah.
around you. And there's a chain there. But I think the first thing that has to happen in order to break that, no matter what you are, and then even on a good story, like I've got a good story. My cycle was that I didn't know that it was possible to make a living in the outdoors. I didn't know that it was possible to be a fishing guide.
It took different thinking.
I was never around a fishing guide,
Mm.
right? So it wasn't like there, I have a bad story, but it's all the same to me in that there is a cycle of behavior. That can be good behavior, it can be bad behavior, it can be indifferent behavior. This is just the way that your family has made a living. This is where your family has lived. No one has ever traveled in your family, right? So all of a sudden, how do you become that person that says, I think I'd like to travel?
That's
and
me.
that's actually possible.
That's me. I hadn't been outside of the Southeast, and there wasn't much of that. The first time I ever flew in a plane was when I got married.
Yeah, but
know?
but don't you think that the military did a lot for that? Like, that's all travel.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
Right.
But that's that stepping out of the comfort zone. And what's amazing is when just something as simple as travel. You had talked about this with Turner. Going your experience going out west and experiencing and seeing something different.
mm-hmm.
It's like all of a sudden you see things that you never saw before, and you see them in a way that you never thought you'd see them before.
I heard there was a person here that came and spent a little time here, and I spent some time with, and then he went and did this big trip. And he went all over the place. And this morning I saw his message, and it said, "Here's some highlights from my trip. Hiking here, going here, listening to Where the Red Fern Grows with my daughter," all of these different things that were super highlights of this trip. And then at the bottom, it said, travel or life is like a book. And if you never travel, you only read one page over and over again,
Mm-hmm.
which travel within our country, travel within your state, travel within, just getting out and seeing how other people are doing things. And that's one of the things that I see in breaking those chains. Good behavior, bad behavior, indifferent behavior, something as simple as travel. If you get out and you get around other people, good people, bad people, horrible people, you see different behaviors. You see things. Like for me, I went to Jackson, Wyoming, and I lived with a family. And this family, the guy was a fishing guide. He made his living as a fishing guide. His name was Chris Patterson, and he had a wife and a daughter. And so it was just at the time when I was starting to understand that being a fishing guide is like a thing. That's like something that you could do.
And I think it's important to note too, I don't want to step on you here, but I imagine he probably wasn't a multimillionaire. So that, just to be clear, we're not talking about success equals big bucks.
No.
Yeah, it's
Success
just,
is happiness.
Exactly.
Success is happiness and having no regrets and going to bed every night and sleeping with a clear conscience.
Yes.
I mean, that's what I look at that and I'm like, if you go to bed every night with a clear conscience and no regret, then you are successful, right?
Absolutely.
And
Absolutely.
in a lot of cases, if you're living your life that way, the money comes.
Isn't it funny?
But
it's like you live through abundance.
Right.
You start trying to do stuff for others. You start not really making it about money. And in a weird way, that's kind of when it starts happening.
Yeah, that is what kind of when it starts happening. But in this case, like Chris showed me, like I was like, oh, that's kind of a thing. Like he's a fishing guide. He's making his living. But before that, my first exposure to fishing guide being a thing, a profession, an honorable profession that you could do, an alternative pathway in life, were some other people that kind of did it, part-time or they were single or whatever. Chris was the first person that had a family and was providing for his family really well. And I'm like, oh, before I kind of thought it was an either or. Like I could either do something similar to what my dad did and have a family, which I always wanted, or I could live like a trout bum.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah.
and no woman is going to want to live like that.
Mhm.
And that part I probably had correct.
Yes.
Because
Yep.
that is a very tough life. It's a vagabond lifestyle. You might as well be following around a circus.
Yep.
I mean, and so Chris was the first one that showed me, and I even remember the day, and I've talked about it many times on the podcast, is like I remember the day where I went to him and I said, So you're a fishing guide, right? Like that's what you do. And he's like, Yep. I said, and you can do that? And he was like, well, I don't know, but I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And I was just like, wow. I mean, that was profound to me. And that was the moment that you break out of this cycle of behavior. And you're talking about like in high school, that one teacher that was really, really important to you and was teaching you, personal responsibility and teaching you basically what is referred to now because of Jocko Willink's amazing book, Extreme Ownership.
Yep. I love that book.
And but everybody, you have to have that in your life somewhere to break out of whatever cycle it is. Even if it's a good cycle, you have to get out of it and get with bad people to see that there are bad habits that you can get into, right? So it can go either way.
Yeah.
Like you can go and be around bad people and then you learn bad things and maybe you acquire those habits. Or you're in a cycle of poor performance of whatever kind.
Yeah.
And if you travel, if you go to different schools, if you get around other people, that's where you see, oh, honesty's a thing.
So
travel is a thing.
So what I hear you saying, and just to draw some context here, is it's almost like you have to find a new tribe.
Well,
right?
That is what happens.
Because
for you, was that the military?
So I was working with someone one time, and they said, Chad, you strike me as someone that's high need for structure. And I said, what do you mean by that? And they said, well, because of your household you came up in and everything, you like things in order. And I said, I do very much. And they said, I bet a lot of people think you're that way because you're in the Marine Corps. But if you were to look back, you might agree that that's what attracted you to the Marine Corps because you're
interesting.
That way. And I said, you know what, you're right, because I looked at other branches, and there none of them. And anyone that's listening to this, please don't take this as a derogatory comment towards any of the other branches. It's really not. But for me personally, when I went into the different recruiting offices, the Marine Corps just had a different snap and pop to it, and I just liked that.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
there's a snap and pop, all right. I wasn't in the Marine Corps, but I know from my friends that were, there's a snap and pop.
There's a snap and pop, absolutely. Now, the Navy, you've got the SEALs and everything. My fear with the Navy was I didn't want to be stuck on a boat for years.
Mm-hmm.
Like I can't do that. Remember, I can't stand being in a cube farm. Don't put me in the belly of a boat either. That's not for me. For a short period of time, I can handle it. But so that's what kind of drew me to the Marine Corps. So but finding the new tribe, it's this idea of, if your family is all this way and everybody you know is all this way, we tend to kind of want to be in people groups. Like I want to be able to relate to these other people.
Mm-hmm.
And so Deborah Tannen wrote a great book called That's Not What I Meant. And in that book, she talks about the different communication devices. And so we meet these people in life. Some of them, their communication device is complaining. It's just the way they talk.
Right.
You run into them and they go, man, can you believe gas is $3.29 a gallon? What they're wanting you to do is they're wanting you to say, yeah, isn't that some bull crap? And now there's a conversation.
You to jump into that hole with them.
Well, the thing is, though, the funny thing is, many times they're actually not that negative of a person. They're just, that's their communication device. So in other words, I don't know how to strike up a conversation with you organically, so I'm going to throw out a complaint and hoping that you respond with a complaint.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is, though, is that if that's all that is around you, that becomes formative in how you think, right? Because
no question.
Everybody, you can't see. I love my mom. She's one of the hardest working people I've ever met in my life. I don't think I could hold a candle to her. I really don't. I think about her many times when I'm putting in a late night or something. I'm thinking, if mom were here right now, she'd probably blow this out of the water and tell me I need to up my game, But that said, her view of the world was the have and the have-nots.
The scarcity.
Yes, she would say, well, we're not like those people. Those people are whatever. Speaking of people that had money or what perceivably had money, maybe they didn't have any and they just were in debt, but they looked like they had it. That was her view of the world. So that's what I heard growing up. And so honestly, for a long time, that's kind of the way that I viewed things, is that, well, it'd be nice if you could be like that, but that's them. And so when we're in that tribe, when that's how everybody talks, you kind of get sucked into
Mm-hmm.
it because you want to fit in with everybody. Like if you go to family dinner and everybody talks about those people over there and you're like, well, there's nothing wrong with those people. Those people are awesome people.
Yeah, but
Well,
how would you even know that? That gets back to
well, no,
my
I
point.
agree. I
That
agree.
gets
That's
back
what
to
I'm
my
saying.
point
I'm
of,
agreeing with you. You
Yeah, I
got to
know.
expose yourself to it.
But if
Yeah.
you hadn't have been over there with those people,
Yes.
to be listening, and all of a sudden you're listening to what the people that you love most in your life are telling you, and you're going, that's not true.
Bingo.
Had you not been over there
Yes.
and experienced those people, then you would be sitting there going, yeah, right, those
Yeah.
people.
Cross the field, go through the trail, and go visit the other tribe. See what it looks like.
Right.
It's probably not anything like you thought it
Now,
was.
see, we're talking about some big issues of poverty and drug abuse and all of that kind of stuff. But when I talk to my kids about something that we don't necessarily have a bad story, but it's like, I didn't do that well in school, right? My kids know that because, like, some people come over and they're like, hope you're doing better than your dad did.
Oh,
you
my
know?
goodness.
I just had a hard time in school. It was hard for me to pay attention. So it's like, look, just because I made a 3.0 by killing myself, I mean, a 3.0 is probably a great exaggeration. Let's call it a 2.2. You know, just because I did that doesn't mean that that's what you have to do.
Mhm.
And look, there are it's a thing to have a 4.0. To me, that was not a thing.
Yeah.
I wasn't exposed to that. Even though people in my classroom were exposed to that, I wasn't walking through the trail and going and visiting the other tribe. I wasn't seeing that it was cool to have a 4.0. I was just waiting for wrestling practice to start. So it could be like what we're talking about is just getting out of that cycle of behavior, whatever it is. And like we said, good or bad.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, see, the thing is, some things that are perceived good, like we're talking about, and I'm talking about this very much because it's my context, North Georgia, single wide trailer. I mean, talking about being a stereotype, good grief. But it even exists, and when you even look at the other tribe, here's corporate America. Both your parents are uber successful, but you don't get any of their time. They're a slave to the machine.
Mm.
They're in their commute in Atlanta, an hour and a half to get home. You're an after school. You're a latchkey child. You hear that phrase sometimes. And you just get bits and pieces. And their lives are, I don't want to say broken. I think that's too strong of a word, but definitely imperfect. And so that person coming along, they may look at the world and go, you know what? I don't want any of that. Whereas I'm coming out of a trailer going, gosh, if I could just have, this. The thing is that there's a reality. That's what I said earlier. There's principles that exist whether you like them or not. The challenge, though, is to look at things and go, okay, I have choice in this. I can choose. I don't have to choose this path or that path. I can choose my path. And what I love is that, and you are such an embodiment of this. I love it, love it, love it. And I've really, really enjoyed our time together in November when we did fish, hearing your story and seeing that you're proof that one of the things that can very much make something attainable is just a pure passion for it. Just a pure passion for it. So, and sometimes we don't find out what our passion is for because we don't go out and we don't explore the world. We don't get to see and taste those things. College, you hear it all the time. I don't know. Grab a backpack and go see something. That's a pretty darn good education in itself. And find what you're passionate about. I'm convinced, because you see it online with all these different social media accounts and things, there are people that are me personally, I can't relate to this at all, but there are people that are passionate about video games, and they're making millions of dollars making little videos on YouTube or whatever about video games. Like, who would ever have thought 20 years ago that would even be a thing?
Right.
So, there's definitely a combination of things. But probably the biggest is choice, is choosing and knowing that you do have a choice. The path may not be easy. It may not be pretty. You'll probably screw some stuff up along the way. But to flip that switch and say, you know what? I'm just going to do this different, or I'm going to at least explore different options. And so many times we get in such deep ruts that sadly we I'm speaking as humanity, we find ourselves in our 40s and our 50s with a whole lot of regret. And I hate that for people. Anybody I can see that I can help see things different, I probably brush the cat backwards once in a while with folks because I'm a challenging personality. But I love to see people win because I know it's winnable.
Yeah,
I know it's winnable.
Yeah, it is. I think that one of the things that you touched on just a minute ago is so important and also very interesting to me about really positive and negative speech. You seem to be someone that pays particular attention to your speech and the words that you use, and how really moving towards the positive and staying away from the negative, staying away from the complaining, staying away from just using negative words. How do you think has that been a theme in your life? Did you ever see that change?
Absolutely. We live and die on the hill of nuance because it's the little things that shape the big. If your attitude when you wake up in the morning is, well, crap, it's Monday. I got to put up with this person at work or whatever. Well, you're already behind. Then you get there and the thing you thought was going to happen is probably going to happen. And then you justify your position as, well, I bet nothing's going to go right after lunch. And you basically create a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, you're going to have a crap day. The funny thing is that opportunities were hitting you in the side of the head and you could never see them because of your mindset. And anybody that's ever been in a relationship, we know this. Words matter. They matter. They shape people.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your words, even on the inside, what's in your mind, if you did nothing else but step back and say, as soon as that doubt or that thing starts to creep in, no, it doesn't have to be a bad day. I'm going to make it a good one. I'm going to walk across the office and I'm going to compliment someone on some work that they did. I'm going to make sure, if nothing else, that they have a good day.
Mm-hmm.
And if you step out of your comfort zone and start doing that, it's amazing what happens. It's incredible.
I noticed it in my own life when I came across that idea of positive versus negative in your speech particularly, but in your thoughts as well. Like, the difference between, the goal is to win the game. There's two ways to get there. I want to destroy the competition, or I want me and my team to come together and win this so that we can go on and do something great. It's a very different mindset, and it's a very different result. Well, the result may be the same a lot of times. You win the game, but you won it with a negative direction versus winning it with a positive direction.
I heard it said recently, sometimes when you're fighting too hard against something, you're going in the complete opposite direction. So if you picture a boxer in a ring and you're going in and you're fighting, the solution to winning that fight may be right over your right shoulder. You should actually be fighting to the solution, not fighting the problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of nuanced. It's a really weird way to look at it. But when you're so headstrong into, like you said, the negative, like, I'm going to win this game by just beating the crap out of everybody and everything, but I'm going to do it. Yeah, you can get there. You can get there out of just sheer will. But while you were doing that, you may not have realized that there was an easy button that you could have just pressed like right there, because you're not fighting to the solution. It's that whole idea of seeing problems versus opportunities. I mean, we even with our business, we've got a lot of employees, a lot of moving parts and things, and something comes up, and the immediate reaction is like, oh, we got it. And I always catch myself and go, okay, what am I missing? Where's the win here that's not obvious because I'm so focused on this problem? And it's almost always way easier and right around the corner than what I thought it was going to be.
But what about where's the win for everyone?
Absolutely.
Like, everybody that's playing here, there is a solution where everybody can win.
Bingo.
Right?
Yes.
And
make the pie big.
Unfortunately, maybe somebody has to lose in a lot of situations, but there are, on your team, how can everyone on my team win?
Yes.
And how can the client that we are going for, or in my case, the sponsor, how can we all benefit from this in a way that is so good that nobody thought it was possible to begin with? Yeah, that difference between positive and negative has been profound in my life.
It's the making the pie bigger instead of cutting more pieces out of the same size, right? It's the idea of there's only this much for us to work with, and I'm going to get it, instead of saying, well, how can I make there be 2 times as much of that, right?
Yeah. The scarcity mentality is also a debilitating factor for a lot of people.
Well, see, to me, that kind of comes from that negative mindset.
Yeah,
I think it's the same place.
I think it's very similar to what you're talking about the guy that walks up to you and complains about gas prices immediately. You're not even talking about driving anywhere. It's like, that's just a way to talk. Or like people in the gym and they see a workout on the board and they're like, oh, this is going to suck. And that's like a compliment to the workout, or that's how they're seeing it, of like, I came here to get a really hard workout and that one's going to be really hard, as opposed to, man, this is going to be awesome. It's going to get me one step closer to my goal. It may hurt, but it's going to be amazing. And I'm going to give it everything I've got. Whereas like in the SealFit Kokoro camp, we could never put our hands on our hips, right? If you put your hands on your hips, you were penalized horribly. One time I had to do 10 no-handed burpees in the rocks. You know, they were like, you want to put your hands on your hips? Now put them in your pocket. Now do 10 burpees like that. And if nothing else, that really taught me a lesson. And then the instructor wasn't just like, listen, we don't allow hands on hips. He pulls me aside and he says, listen, do you know what you're saying when you put your hands on your hips? Do you know that is telling everyone around you that you just gave up? Do you know that you're telling yourself that you just gave up?
That's the nuance I was talking about. We live and die on the hill of nuance. I mean, I remember when I was in the Corps at Parris Island, I didn't realize how much training we were getting at the time. But when we ate, we couldn't look at our food. If you looked at your food, they took it away from you.
Mm-hmm.
You're staring at the guy straight across from you. You've got your fingers extended to join, thumb along the hand on your lap of the hand you're not using. And then you've got the hand that you're eating with. And you're sitting up straight as a board, right? Well, that fingers extended to join, thumb along the hand, that's a dress right dress movement.
Mm-hmm.
So they were building muscle memory in every little thing we did. And you think, well, what's the importance of that? When things started to matter, all those little nuanced things that we were doing kind of came together at once without thought.
Mm-hmm.
If our thought process is that, well, I'm going to slouch and lean forward. I'm going to have my hand just kind of doing whatever. You think, what's the big deal? You're eating lunch. Like, you've got all day to do all this drill exercise and everything else. We said earlier, snap and pop. When the rounds start going overhead and somebody says, you know, you get some more ammo over there to the other fire team, you got to do that like there's nothing else in this world, and you're breaking yourself to try to get it there, but instantly.
Right.
And that
without really thinking about it.
That snap and pop doesn't happen in slackness. And, you know, so things have got to be tight. So that's what you're talking about, like hands on your hip. That seems so innocent, but really there's an internal, there's a, you know.
I'm going to take a second here.
Exactly.
This is too hard.
And that's the micro version of it, but lots of times we see people live it in a very outward way where they're just, well, nothing's going right. You know, and that's the bigger, you know, you're
putting their hands up.
You're defeated.
Yeah, you're defeated.
You're defeated. And so when you're defeated, you're a victim.
Right. That goes all the way back to the beginning of the conversation. And then what I would imagine that you're doing in the Marine Corps with all of those nuanced things of how you're holding your non-used hand there, that is just the overarching theme is that you're creating discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And then the overarching theme even beyond that to how your period of time in the military translates into your success out of the military is that the way you do anything is the way you do everything. So when you are so disciplined in the way you dress and the way that you're holding your hand when you eat, getting up at 6 o'clock every morning is nothing.
Bingo.
Right? Like,
bingo.
That's absolutely nothing. And
nailed it.
So, and that goes to Jocko Willink's book, Extreme Ownership. And if the people that are listening to this haven't read that book, it's highly recommended.
Absolutely.
But his whole deal is discipline equals freedom. And discipline equals freedom. Freedom is exactly what we're talking about right here. If you have the discipline to do all the little things, you have the freedom not to worry about it. You know you're going to perform when it comes time. If you have the discipline to pay attention to how you are holding your hand at every single meal and not looking down at your plate, you have the freedom later in life to be able to say, you know, that's something I need to do and I'm going to start doing it. I'm going to do it every day from here forward. And you know you're going to do it.
Here's the beautiful thing about exposing yourself to extreme discomfort. Everything that I experience in life now is kind of baselined off of Parris Island. So we get into a snag with business. You know, these things aren't coming together like we thought. At least I'm not at Parris Island, right? I mean, you know, you got this barometer now to where things that for a lot of other people are like this really big deal, you just kind of shrug them off. You're like, yeah, whatever. You know, we'll get through it. But exposing yourself to those things, that is so huge. I've heard it said, they told us this in the Corps, there's going to be two pains in life. You cannot escape them. You'll experience one or the other. One's a pain of discipline. The other one's a pain of regret. You're going to experience them. So from Jocko's point of view, you want to be free from regret. have discipline.
Right.
It's so freeing.
Yeah.
Right. It's so freeing.
If you have the discipline, then you will have the freedom to never regret anything.
Absolutely. That is so true.
I mean, you can
So
take
true.
that. You can take what I like so much about his little thing there. Discipline equals freedom, which is a little thing. It's 3 words, right? It's not a little thing. It's a major
Big
concept that is a underlying theme in his life and in many other successful people's life. But it is, you can take it anywhere. If you have the discipline to work out and watch your diet for 20 years, when you get a little bit older, you have the freedom to go to the doctor and he says, how many medications are you on?
None. Yep.
I'm on none. Do you have any problems with your joints? Nope. Your son comes up to you and says, hey, I'd really like for you to climb this mountain with me. You have the freedom to say, what day, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I love that whole aspect of of discipline equals freedom, and you can take it to every level in your life. But that's super interesting. So all of this story leads up to your fishing habit,
and it is I would call it more of an addiction.
So how does it happen that someone that is so disciplined that is working on a business to grow a business, basically that was all you were doing for a while. How does it happen that you end up embracing fishing and fly fishing so much?
So with business, like many things in life, there's levels of maturity. So when we first started the business, it was go, 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 go. We've got to build capital. Because the thing that always tanks a business, and especially a small business when it first starts out in the first few years, is cash flow management, having enough dollars to survive. Once your business starts performing, you may not have a year as big as what you like, but you're not like on the brink of going out, right? So the first few years, that's all we were focused on. The difficult thing was flipping the switch to realize that, okay, we don't have to stay on that gas pedal for 10 years, right? So the maturity was saying, it's this whole thing on choice again, is that I can choose to be a slave to the business, to work more hours, to try to do more, alienate my family. Going back to what I was talking about earlier with when I was even considering starting the business, one of the fears that I had was just that, like having a family that didn't get to experience me or my time because I had this thing that was consuming me, right? But I made a choice. I made a choice that, like, for example, I'm here with you today. It's a great honor. This is fun. Tomorrow, I'm going fly fishing. I don't know exactly where yet, but that's my personal assistant has marked that off my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
But I chose to do that. Now, could I try to chase more? Could I try to do more? Yeah, I probably could. I found that at a certain point, you kind of meet maximum, like your ability to output, your capacity to really contribute at your very best kind of starts to tap out, which is challenging for someone that thinks they can always do more. They spent time in the Marine Corps. They've achieved this. They've achieved that. I've got my pilot's license. I've got this. I've got, like I can do whatever I want to do. The world's my oyster. You can, but not at your very best if you don't put some more back into you. Right? So one of the things that, and I love this, I love a lot of Donald Miller's things that he's got out there. For those that don't know who that is, he's an author of several books that are one. I know at least one of them was a best-selling book. But I was listening to him recently, and he said, what was it? He said he enjoys watching movies. He enjoys going to the movies and picking apart scripts and things because he's a writer, right? Mm-hmm. But for him, it's kind of like this guilty pleasure. Like, well, I've got his business is growing. He's got things going. I probably shouldn't be at the movies, on Tuesday at 2:00, right? He just felt guilty. And one of his mentors told him, he said, look, is that something that you really enjoy? Does it like fuel you? Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Then you need to start thinking of that as like a task. So it's not this thing that is this guilty pleasure. It's the same thing as your Wednesday morning operational meeting. You have to do this. And he thought, that's a different way to look at it. So he actually puts time in his schedule. Hey, you know what? We're going to focus and get these things accomplished this week. I'm going to make sure everybody's on track. Everybody's winning. But Friday or Thursday or whatever, there's this movie I want to see. I'm going to go watch it.
Mm-hmm.
And he does. So I've been doing that with fishing. I go, yeah, okay. I could just keep doing more and more and more and more. But what am I like? What is life? Like, why am I here? I'm not here just to build this great big nest egg, alienate everybody in my life, and then die, and then have everybody go fight over it. Like, I can't take any of it with me. When am I going to start living?
Mm-hmm.
I really, really enjoy fishing, and I enjoy the business too. It's not this laborious thing that I have to do. I enjoy both, but I really enjoy fishing. How can I do that now instead of saying, "Oh, well, when I'm 60, then I'll start doing it."
Right. Who knows? Who knows? This is, I don't know if you've read this book or not, but I just finished it. It's Jesse Itzler, Living with Monks.
Oh, I
And he wrote another book, and he invited David Goggins to live at his house for a month, which David Goggins is like, if a Navy SEAL is extreme, he's the most extreme of the extreme.
Wow.
I mean, this guy he's an amazing freak of an animal, of a human being that is very extreme. Ultra endurance races, set the pull-up record for 24 hours at over 7,000, if I remember correctly.
I remember
I mean,
that.
he is just all the time going. Anyway, Jesse Itzler is a guy in Atlanta and also has a house up north. His wife invented Spanx, and he has done very well. He started Zico coconut water, then sold it to Coca-Cola. He had one of those MedJet type businesses and sold it to Warren Buffett. And so, I mean, he's done very well, but he's a guy that always is trying to grow and always is trying to figure out like how he can have the best life possible. And this book, Living with Monks, he already did Living with SEAL, and then he's now done this book, Living with Monks, and he went to live with this at a monastery for 2 weeks, I think, and it's just the lessons that he learned, and he developed a great relationship with time, like, and he also developed a great relationship, like we're talking about here, with his own time. And his idea is that he marks off 3 hours a day for himself, and he explains that as, look, if I don't do what I want, he really likes to run. So he wants to, and this 3 hours might be a long run, sit in the sauna, get a massage, whatever it is for him. It's all his time. And his thing is, look, if I don't do this, then I'm going to be wishing that I was doing it while I'm at work. And that's going to make me feel a certain way towards the people around me. And if I want to give everything I have towards work, then I need to be giving myself some time. Because if I'm at work wishing I could be doing something for myself, that's not good. Mm-hmm. If I'm doing something for myself and I wish I was or I'm feeling guilty about being at work, that's not good. If I'm doing something for myself and I'm feeling guilty because I'm not at home with my family, that's not good. If I'm with my family and I wish I could get in that run, that's not good. So what he's done is he's figured out how to put 3 hours aside for himself. He spends that time, and it makes him be super focused on his family when he's with his family, on his work when he's with his work, at his own personal.
But just think about how you work, what your tempo is, what your spirit is when you know that when Monday morning happens and you've already set all of Friday aside, and you go, Friday, I'm going to disappear in the North Georgia mountains. I don't know where yet. Sometimes I know exactly where I want to go. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I like to just kind of wing it, see what the weather holds, different conditions. But man, my Monday through Thursday, I've got all kinds of pep in my step.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have to sit and daydream about, I wonder when the next time is I'm going to be able to go out and go. No, it's going to happen Friday, so I can go ahead and park.
And again, this goes back to the discipline equals freedom. If you are disciplined enough in your work habits and for a number of years, you have the freedom to be able to take Fridays off. You have the freedom to be able to do whatever it is that you are planning on doing to give that time back to yourself. We're getting a visitor.
Yeah. Well, you absolutely. And so here's where it gets to be really fun, though. So, and I'm not a guide. I don't try to pretend to be one. I just like to learn. I like to learn. So I've been with a lot of guides, and I've learned from some of the very best out there. But I like to also share what I've learned. So I've got 35 employees. This isn't appropriate with all of them because they're not all guys and they don't all like to fish. I'm not going to take some of my admin and some other folks that work there, the ladies, and say, hey, let's disappear up in the mountains together. That would never work. I can't do that. But I'm fortunate in that I've got a lot of guys that do work for me that are either outdoorsmen or aspire to want to be outdoorsmen. So I can grab them and take one of my managers, and I'm going to take him with me tomorrow. And I'm going to say, listen, you're going to mark your calendar off for Friday, pending that works okay with your wife and everything, because we typically leave a little bit earlier and get back a little bit later because it's a drive up there. But he's totally pumped. Like, he's on 11 about it. And what I'll probably spend a big part of my day doing is not just me fishing, is putting him on fish and watching him catch. He's going to catch his first trout tomorrow. going to happen.
Yeah.
And I can't wait. That is going to be awesome. And so, and yeah, I'm going to fish them too.
But that also goes into team building and such with your own team and giving an experience, something that you feel strongly about yourself, and you're sharing that with the people that are working with you or for you. That goes a long way into building a team, right?
It is, but I'll tell you what, I know that this is going to help with team building, but I go into it genuinely with zero agenda. We will not talk about work tomorrow. If he wants to talk about work, if he wants to go there, if he's got a question or whatever, we'll talk about it. I'm not going to talk about it. I want to know about his family. I want to know about what his dreams and aspirations are. You're working for me. Do you want to retire on a sailboat one day? Like, what's your thing, right?
So that helps you as a leader. That helps you to help him to reach his goals. If you don't know what his goals are,
Absolutely.
You have no idea how to help him reach. And then that goes back to a lot of the things that we were talking about before about putting others first. And, in order to achieve super success, if you help others accomplish their goals, you're going to accomplish your goals, no problem.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of what you're doing.
This is a word that's going to sound cheesy and touchy-feely because I think many people misunderstand it. And I'm just now in my life starting to really understand what it means. And I probably still haven't fully grasped it, but it's empathy. And for me, empathy was like again, just like kind of a touchy-feely. And I thought, well, put yourself in the other person's shoes. That is such a misconception. It's not put yourself in the other person's shoes. Put yourself in their shoes as if you are them. So if I know that this person, employee, friend, whoever, doesn't matter who it is, if I know that they're insecure, they view the world, they have a high need for approval, then, I could go bombastically into the room and say, well, I'm successful, and if you listen to me, I can tell you what works, and da-da-da-da, and I could totally think that I'm helping that person. But the message that you tell or what you say doesn't matter. All that matters is what sticks, what lands. So I might know that, okay, for this person, some of the things that I might say, some of the conversation that you and I might have, because we're very like-minded, wouldn't work for that person. So using empathy would be, I'm going to speak to them the best that I know how, and I might still get it wrong, and in a way that's best for them, right? So when you translate that to business, all aspects of business, like employees, we many times don't spend the time as managers. I've got this thing that I've come up with. Maybe somebody else has said it somewhere else. If they have, I don't know it. But you can't manage people. You can't. I don't care what anybody tells you. I don't care what college. You can't manage people. You can only grow them. You can either grow them or don't. But if you bring them in and try to control them, hey, I'm going to bring you in here. I interviewed you. I've got you at this salary. You're going to sit at this desk. You're going to do what I say. They may comply. But you're only going to get compliance.
Right.
You're not going to get the abundance.
It's interesting. In that same book that I was just referencing there, of Living with Monks, Jesse Itzler talks about his wife's management strategy, and what she does in that case is go to that person and say, listen, here are the things that need to be done. And if this was your job, how would you do it? And then back off and leave that person. Because if you have hired that person correctly, they're sharp.
Absolutely.
They're there. And if you give them the freedom to say, well, if I've got to do all of that, I'm going to do it this way.
Yeah.
It's like,
and
perfect.
Here's the thing
Step
about
away
it. Here's
and
the thing
do
about
it.
it. The way that they come up with might not even be the most efficient way. Like you may look at it and go, well, why would you do it like that? But that's the way for them to do it that's important for them. And doing it the way that fits them best will yield more than even your more efficient, what you think is your more efficient way, forcing them into that box. I've seen this happen so many times. The mistake that I used to make, again, maturity in business, is that I would see a path forward and go, this is the way we need to do this. This is how we do it. And the other person feels like it needs to be done a different way. In the end, I'm going to get as good or better results doing it their way. But the thing is that they've got ownership in it.
Yeah, sometimes. But there's also the situations where, like, if we, our job is managing sponsorships and managing television shows and managing these things. And if I bring in somebody young that has no experience there,
well,
and I say,
yes,
look,
there's exceptions.
This is how it's done.
Absolutely.
And this is the way that we're going to do it until you get enough experience in doing this that you can have some ownership over this position. And then we can talk about, okay, you've been doing this for a year. Is there a better way to do it?
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. I agree 100%. I'm speaking in generalities. There's always specifics. There's certain, I mean, there's things that are just, some things are just safety issues. You know, like we're in the roofing business. It's like, well, I can move more freely on the roof if I'm not tied off on the lanyard. Yeah, but you could die. So you're going to tie off. I don't really care if you like it or not. You know? So there's definitely those things. But I think many times as leaders, as entrepreneurs, and I want to really just say leaders, because there's a lot of folks probably listening to this that they're like, well, I don't own a business. Well, yeah, but if you're not a leader, you can be one. Even if you're not a manager, you may just be a floor employee. But I tell you what, if you start going on a path and then people start following you, you're a leader.
Yeah.
Right.
And then again, you can, if that's a new concept, read Extreme Ownership, because he talks about leading up and down the chain.
Absolutely.
And in his case, he's talking about leading up and down the chain of command in the military, that you want to do. He was laying it out this way: a task or a mission or a project comes their way, they look at it and say, "This is really not good. Like, this looks like it's not going to end up well." So his job is not to fight that process. His job is to go back to the leaders and say, can we talk about this, and let me explain what I think, why I think this is a dangerous way to do it. I think we should do it this other way. And that's leading up the chain. Mm-hmm. Like, you are going from a place of being a junior and going to the senior person and leading, educating them,
absolutely,
leading them to a better decision, and then coming back and then leading your men. Of course, that's a military example of the most extreme, but that could go into the fishing guide that says, the outfitter tells him to go do something this way, and he goes to the outfitter and says, "You know what? Can we talk about this? Because if I pick them up here, then this is going to be a more efficient trip. Everybody's going to have a better time. It's going to be safer." The outfitter may not have thought about that.
Yeah, that's like, the beauty of the body of the work of the collective when we're all kind of going in the same direction, is that perspective. Somebody else has got a different view. Sometimes can provide the super efficient way to do, the way better way to do things. The fact, though, that Jocko was able to do that in the military, which most people would view as do what you're told, don't ask questions, the fact that he could make that work, there's only even more evidence that we could do it in a lot of places. Right? But this idea, to get back to this idea of empathy, when you put others first, like my business partner, and I don't want to pick on him here. I don't want to make this sound like this is not a derogatory comment. He has a different learning style than I do. Like, for me, I context for me is really high. So when I read a book, it's just one chapter of the collective of all the books that I've read. So I'm kind of piecing them together, little bits and pieces. And it's not that John doesn't think that way, but he's more visual. So like, if I want to communicate with him and say, "Hey, I've got this vision of this thing we can do with this project, and this is how I think it'll benefit us," if I build a chart or a graph or something, way faster to communicate with him. And because I know that about him, I'm not going to just come to him with a concept and puke on him. I'm going to take the time to do that so he can see and read it and understand it. And so this spending time with him, I call it people work. I call it people work. And the funny thing is that, again, early when the business was doing well, but we were immature, we thought of people work as like non-productive tasks. Like, okay, yeah, we could go hang out together and do this fun thing together or whatever, but we don't make money doing that. We got to go make the donuts, right? The funny thing is that work actually makes you the most profitable, because think about the Marine Corps, for example. You read these stories, and God bless these Marines, these PFCs that go into these fighting houses and a grenade gets chunked in, and he runs and he goes and he jumps on the grenade. I got news for you. I had PFC pay at one time. Hell, I had private pay at one time because I didn't even go in with a stripe. He didn't do that for the money. He did that because he loved everybody in that room. You want to have a place of work where everybody loves one another. They're there for the other guy. And people think, well, you can't. I mean, this is corporate stuff. This is a business. No. All that can equal true. The only reason why it doesn't equal true is because you haven't built that environment. You can build that environment. If you build that environment, if you make that a part of your culture, if you teach your lieutenants to be as good or better than you are at doing those things. Well, my managers have budgets, and they better use them. Take the guys. I got a guy that works for me that was in the Army. He was with Blackwater. He's the real deal. We got a few guys on his staff that like to shoot or want to learn to shoot. He takes them with his budget. He goes to the range and they do shooting drills together and everything. And it's not really got anything to do about work. It's about spending time together. There's no hidden agenda. There can't be a hidden agenda because then the trust is broken on that. The connectedness that his team has, you couldn't pry them apart if you wanted to. I dare somebody to come in and try to offer them more money or a different job. They'd scoff at it.
Interesting. That's the best piece of advice out of this whole conversation, I think, of creating an environment where everybody loves one another so much, and that they're not seeking success solely for themselves, but they're seeking success for the benefit of everyone around them, whether that's the boss or their coworker or the person that's working underneath them or the person that's working side by side. Creating that environment is absolutely invaluable. Like you could not place a value on that, whether that's a fishing outfit, a hunting outfit, a business like yours, or a cubicle, a bunch of people in cubicles. If you can get people to care enough about the whole, then you're not going to have a problem leading them, right?
And that's our duty. That's our duty as leaders, is to provide a place of abundance. That's our. And the thing is that there's some people that are not going to fit in that culture. I mean, there's some people that and we've experienced this, is that they can't turn the corner on it, and they'll cull themselves out. They will.
But there's a place for those people too.
Absolutely, I agree 1,000%.
It's just like the kid that can't play on a team, right?
Yes,
they don't play well on a team, so they could be a swimmer or a wrestler or a tennis player,
yes,
or any of these individual sports where they are acting individually, but they're also acting as a team. There are certainly people that are going to be way better off as an independent salesman on the road all the time.
We say this all the time. People that aren't culture fits for us are not bad people. They're great culture fits someplace else.
Right.
But in the same way that we do things for others, we have a responsibility that when we interview for someone, and even if it's just our gut feeling that this guy's just not going to fit here with us, that's still thinking about them first.
Yeah.
It would be derelict for me to bring you into our culture if my gut said you're not going to work here, and then let the flywheel of business chew you up and spit you out. That's wrong. You don't do that. There's a place where you're going to thrive, and you need to find that place. And just because it's not with us doesn't mean you're a bad person or whatever. And so
you just probably did that person a big favor, because it could have spent 2 years being unhappy in your place, and instead they're moving on and finding that place.
And potentially, not because they're a bad person, just because they weren't a culture fit, poison the culture. Because we have a duty when we establish a culture to protect it. Right? You built it, protect it. That doesn't mean close off, have walls built up and close off. We always want to operate from abundance and have open minds and new ideas and things like that. But if someone comes in that's toxic for your culture, it's not that oil is not bad. We need it. We use it in everything. Water is not bad. We couldn't live without it. The two don't go together though, right? So they each have their place. Yeah, it's really, really, really interesting. But going back to where we kind of spun off on this, and I think it's great. But you're talking about fishing and kind of how I incorporate that time in and everything, is that I have been very fortunate to come to a place where I can take the thing that I very, very much love and kind of blend it into another thing that I very, very much love, and I get to do both and have a blast doing it while others are getting to enjoy it. Now, if you're out there listening and you're like, I'd really like to just carve some time out to go fishing, I don't necessarily want to bring people with me, that's fine. You need to do that. You should do that. You should do that.
Well, it might not be time for that yet either. As you're bringing this new thing into your life of carving out time for you to go fishing or go hunting or go work out or take a trail run or whatever it may be, that may not be the time to bring someone in. You're not an expert in that. You're still trying to work out all the kinks. You hadn't figured out where the fish are, right? It's not going to be that much fun for someone who has never gone fishing to watch you try to work out all the details,
but that's empathy, right?
Right.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
then when you get it worked out and you found the right guide, you found the right river, the right time of the year, it's going to be a grand slam home run if you take somebody.
Sometimes, I have since sold it, but I had a BMW GS 1200, kind of like an on-road, off-road deal. I would disappear in the mountains on that thing. And I'd take a book with me, and I'd find some place, Cohutta Wilderness or whatever, and just spend hours just reading under the hemlock by myself. And there's times for that. There's times I just need the solitude, And what I especially love about trout fishing, anything in the wilderness, is my phone doesn't work. And when I do get to spend time with other people, their phone doesn't work either. So we have like no distractions. Now I do carry, I've got a Garmin satellite texting device in case there's some type of emergency, like we need help or somebody at home is, I had this experience this spring. You were kind of aware of it, but it was one of the days that I was actually gone in the wilderness and my wife was in a very serious car accident and it almost caused our who's now our newborn son, who's here and he's healthy, come about 7 or 8 weeks early.
Wow.
It was not good. And I didn't know about it until I'd gotten back to the interstate and got signal. Fortunately, the accident had only happened just an hour previously, but it could have happened that morning and she could have been laid in the hospital by herself for 8 hours, So I have a way to be reached now, but absent of that, I'm truly disconnected from the world. And so, but the point though, to circle back on all this is that you asked, how do you find time to, for your passion and to work this stuff in? It's choice. I just decided one day that, you know what, I'm going to do it. And you know what the funny thing is? We do it all the time, but then we tell ourselves it can't be done. So we contradict ourselves. We say, you know what, I'd really like to live in this subdivision or I'd like to buy this house or whatever. And you do it. That girl over there is cute. I'm going to ask her out. And then you do it. Next thing you know, you got kids. We do this stuff all the time in our life, but then we get into work and we go, we sure would be nice if I could go fishing. Well, then go. You'll find a way. You'll figure it out. It's doable. I just decided that's what I'm going to do. And the funny thing is I get no more or less done. I probably get more done. Matter of fact, I know I get more done because I approach things differently. I'm rejuvenated, And we have bigger trips that we take. I do a lot of single day stuff because it's really easy to get that in. But, we go several times a year, Hawks Cay. We get down there, get out with the guides, try to sling a few feathers at some tarpon or whatever. And I was down there this spring and the guy that was on the boat with me, he missed so many hookups. And I told him, I said, here's the deal. I'm not getting on the front of that boat until you stick one. Yeah, honestly, he spent most of the trip on the boat, and I had a really, really good time watching him. He finally got into a nice one. Unfortunately, we didn't get a hero shot with it, but he got what he was after. He got to take that 11 weight rod and bend it double, and that was awesome. So we get to mix in some bigger trips and things like that. But if I've got spare time, I'm going to be on the water. That's where I'm going to be. Anytime I can get there. It started when I was a kid, 4 years old, sneaking behind the house. There's a canal back there, getting in all kinds of trouble. It's wonders I didn't get eaten or bit by a snake or eaten by a wild animal or something. But anytime there's water, if I drive by water, it's so bad that I put a decked system in the back of my truck with a camper shell so I could carry all my fly fishing stuff with me. Because if I see water somewhere, there's a good chance I'm going to pull off and see if there's anything in it.
There you go. Well, I'll tell you what, we've been going for an hour and a half. You sum it all up that you can have that truck and that rig and stop as you go by a river. And you can do that because discipline equals freedom.
It does.
You've had the discipline to get yourself into this position, and now you have the freedom to enjoy it. So, man, thanks for coming by and talking. That was awesome. Another conversation that we can have is whether or not you should put your friend on the bow and say, I'm not getting up there until you catch one, because I've had number of those trips, and I may have a different opinion.
There's going to be a makeup for that. I promise you, there's going to be a makeup for that. But, well, listen, Tom, I really appreciate you having me. I've enjoyed it. And folks out there listening, I'm going to tell you something. Tom's the real deal. As a person, as I got to know you, and as a fisherman, to see someone that I watched on saltwater for years come to the North Georgia mountains. I, at that time, didn't have all the knowledge of your background to fly fishing. He can work small water like nobody's business. So he's a real deal. He's a real deal for sure.
It's nice of you to say, man. I appreciate it. But it's just been a great pleasure to get to know you and listen to your story. I'm glad we could share it with a lot of other people.
Absolutely. Thank you.
All right. See ya. I always enjoy talking to Chad, and I hope you enjoyed his story too. I guess the themes that we can all learn from that is that, travel. Do what Chad says. Walk that trail from tribe to tribe. Experience what other people are experiencing. Experience different places, different cultures, and keep your mind open to new ideas. Chad has a lot of good leadership opportunities, so if you're a business owner, I'm sure, as I am, I picked up a lot of things from him, and all-around cool guy. So we have a lot more cool podcasts coming up for you. If you enjoyed this podcast, please drop us a line at podcast@saltwaterexperience. If you have other guests that you would like to hear me interview, drop those in there as well. And if you could rate and review this on iTunes, that would be awesome. I hope you guys have an awesome day. And until next week, I'll see you on the water.